If you're like me, there are so many places in this world that you just have to visit sometime in your life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. These are 10 cruises that if they're not already on your bucket list, then they should be. By the way, I'm Melissa with EECC Travels. And if you've been to our channel, welcome back. If you're new to our channel, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. So the first place that we're going to talk about is something that is still on my bucket list that we have not done yet, and that is a Panama Canal cruise. This is something that you can only do on a ship. You cannot do a land tour through the Panama Canal. So this is definitely a top on my bucket list. There's two different ways you can do a Panama Canal cruise. One is a partial transit. Most of these leave from Florida. So you leave from Florida, you cruise into the Panama Canal, you go through the locks, you turn around and you come back out. That is one way to do it, but what I want to do, what is truly bucket list, is go from one side of the country to the other. These mainly happen in the spring and in the fall when ships are going from the Caribbean to Alaska or Alaska back to the Caribbean. Definitely want to do this. I think that the itineraries are really cool because you're going to hit ports that you've never been to before that are in that very tip of North America, Central America. Cruise ships really only go to these ports during a Panama Canal cruise, so really want to do that, but the main thing is going through those locks. I mean, the Panama Canal was created for this reason. Prior to this, ships had to sail all the way around South America to get to the other side. Now, within a couple of hours you can get through. So that is number one, still on my list, have to do it. The second is a transatlantic cruise. So this is not a destination, this is a type of cruise, but it can sort of be a destination as well. Again, there are two ways to do a transatlantic. Number one, they have ships that's all they do. They move from New York to Southampton and back. They do the traditional 7-day crossing. This is what people did before airplanes. If you wanted to go to Europe, you got on a ship and you crossed the Atlantic to get to Europe, or vice versa. If you were in Europe and wanted to come to America, that's how you got there. So I'm not going to say think Titanic, but that's what the Titanic was doing, was a crossing. So you can do the traditional 7-day crossing, or you can make it more of an experience. These, again, are going to happen traditionally spring and fall, and that is when ships are going to Europe or coming back from Europe. Mostly, these are going to be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-day sailings, which is awesome because you've got all those sea days, but then you're going to hit ports that are unique or unusual, like the Azores Islands. There's a lot of cool places that you're going to get to go only during a transatlantic. Also, you can choose the cruise line you want to do because they all do it, and you can choose where you want to go. So if you want to go to Rome, find a transatlantic that leaves from the US and ends in Rome, or Barcelona, or Southampton, or there's several to choose from. So this is a really good way to knock two things off your bucket list. Number one, the transatlantic, and number two, if you've never been to Europe, this is a great way to get to Europe, and then you can do a land tour or another cruise in the Mediterranean or in Europe. Number three, and this one is a little want to do it but kind of scared to do it, and that's Antarctica. It looks just amazing. And this is another one that you can only do via cruise ship because, Antarctica, you can't fly over there, nowhere to land. Well, I mean, you can, but only in little planes, and you got to be on an expedition. But everything I've seen of an Antarctica cruise just looks fabulous. Again, you're talking quite a few sea days because you've got to leave from South America and get to Antarctica. But you're going to see things that you've never seen before, and it just looks fabulous. The interesting thing about this is you go to Antarctica in the winter for the US. So December, January, early February is when you go down there. I thought that was interesting because we think of that being the coldest time of year, but that's actually the warmest time of year in Antarctica. Also in that realm is the Arctic Ocean. So polar opposites, you're talking southern pole and northern pole. you can cruise to both. And I think that's fantastic. It's one of those things, if you've done everything, but you haven't done this, you need to do Antarctica. It's on our list. I don't know when we're gonna do it, but one day we will. Number 4 is the Galápagos Islands. This is such a unique area of the world. There are species on the Galápagos that are only on the Galápagos. They have morphed into something different than you're gonna find anywhere else in the world, and I think that's fantastic. The Galápagos is also an area that's very small, so you're not going to get a big cruise ship going there. These are expedition cruises, very small ships, sometimes only 100 passengers or less on these ships. This is one of those that's going to be a little on the pricey side, so that's why we're calling it a bucket list trip. Do it once, probably you're going to go, yes, done, mark that off the list, and be happy with it. Okay, the next 2 are similar, but in very different parts of the world. First, we're talking about Alaska. I have been to Alaska. I love Alaska. It is literally my favorite cruise destination. Out of all the places we've been, Alaska, there's just something special about it. The mountains are beautiful. The air is clean. It's the wildlife that you see there. I just love it. You can cruise Alaska on any cruise line. So if you've got your favorite and you're just like, I've done the Caribbean, want to do something else, take that same cruise line that you're happy with and go to Alaska, or try a new one. You can do Alaska in a couple of different ways. You can do a round trip 7-day from either Seattle or Vancouver. And this is going to be what's called Inside Passage, where you're most of the time going through this area where you have land on both sides. Also, the only way you're going to see Glacier Bay National Park is via ship. You can't walk there. You can't fly there. Taking a cruise to Alaska, you're going to see the most amazing glaciers, and you get to spend a whole day at them. So that's just fabulous. Also, another way you can do Alaska is a one-way trip. So you can start in Vancouver or Seattle and go up north to Seward or Anchorage. And then, or you can do it northbound or southbound. The other thing you can do is add a land tour to that. So once you're up in Seward, Anchorage, go to Denali, go to the Yukon, see places that's just fabulous. Now these are land tours. So you're doing a cruise and adding a land tour to it. I just love it. So we've done the round trip to Alaska, have not done the cruise tour, so that portion is still on our bucket list. Very similar to Alaska is the Norwegian Fjords. And everyone's told me, if you love Alaska, just wait till you go to Norway. So that one is really, really high on my list of things to do. I've seen pictures, I've seen video, and it's just amazing. It's got that same feel of Alaska, but different. So these are fantastic cruises. You can do them as short as 7 days, but if you really want to see them, there's some nice 10, 11, 12-day cruises that really get up in the nooks and crannies of Norway and get more ports of Norway. So it's one of those things I'm like, go big or go home. You know, if you're going to do it kind of things. So the Norwegian Fjords is great. Also, what's cool about Norway is the higher you go, there are some that are called midnight sun cruises. So if you go the right time of the year and you go to these higher ports, the sun never sets. It's literally daylight all the time. The sun comes down, it bounces and goes right back up. It never sets. So to see the midnight sun alone is a bucket list. You can do that on a land tour, or you can combine it with a cruise. How awesome is that? So in one trip, you can see the Norwegian Fjords and the midnight sun. That sounds pretty good. That sounds like a bucket list trip to me. Next, let's talk a little bit more tropical. Hawaii. Yes, you can fly to Hawaii. And if you fly to Hawaii, you're really probably only going to spend time on one island. But cruising in Hawaii, you're going to get 4 islands in one trip. We have done this. There are many cruise lines that do long cruises to Hawaii. So they leave from California. You have a lot of sea days. You get to Hawaii, you hit the islands, and then you take the sea days back. What we did, and what I think is the greatest way to see Hawaii, is on Pride of America, which is the only cruise ship that stays in Hawaii. It never leaves. So it sails every Saturday from Honolulu. You get 4 islands, you get 5 ports. It's fabulous, but it's also a teaser. So you're like, oh, but I really liked this and I really liked that. So to me, that was a great introduction to Hawaii. We went, we saw all the islands, and then we said, okay, I liked this and I liked that. So then we can decide, I want to go back to Hawaii. Now I'm going to fly over and spend more time here or spend more time there and do this and do that. So I think that is a great introduction to Hawaii. Also, not far from Hawaii is the French Polynesian. So there are cruises that you can go to Hawaii and cruise to the French Polynesian or vice versa. What a trip that would be to do the Hawaiian Islands and the French Polynesian Islands in one or back-to-back cruises. That sounds like a really good bucket list to me. So we've done one, we have not been to the French Polynesian, so that one is still on our list. Another one that I think is a great cruise bucket list is Asia. And this is something that a lot of people, especially a lot of Americans, don't think of as a cruise destination. But look at cruises in Asia and you will be surprised at what you can do. So I found one that I absolutely loved. I did book it and the big C word canceled it. But it left from Hong Kong and went through Taiwan and Taipei and ended in Japan. So look at all you're seeing in one cruise. And then again, add some to it. I'm a big Disney fan. I'm like, there are 3 Disney parks in Asia. So here's what I had planned. Flying to Shanghai, do Shanghai Disneyland. Then flying to Hong Kong, do Hong Kong Disneyland. Do the cruise to Japan and do Tokyo. So there's so much you can do there. And to me, Asia is literally the other side of the world for us. So to do that cruise, I'm going to spend some time over there. So making it longer, and a lot of these do have longer itineraries. The one I was looking at was, I think, an 11 or 12-day itinerary. So you're talking, a 2, 3, maybe even 4-week trip. But what a trip that would be. Okay, so now, if you've cruised before, you have definitely cruised to one of these next 2 bucket list destinations I'm talking about. But why are they still on there? Because let's talk about the Caribbean. The Caribbean is the place to go on a cruise, right? There are multiple itineraries that you can do in the Caribbean. There are always ports that maybe you've never been to before. There's Eastern Caribbean, there's Western Caribbean, there's the Bahamas, which I know isn't the Caribbean, but we lump it in there. And there's the Southern Caribbean. You can go all the way down to almost South America and do the ABC Islands. There's so many different places you can go and so many different places you can see. You can do as short as a 3-day cruise all the way up to a 21-day cruise just in the Caribbean. So that tells you how much variety there is. And every port has a different feel, a different look, a different, you just have to go and see it for yourself. So the Caribbean is definitely on the bucket list. I can probably sort of check off the Caribbean because we've done Caribbean so many times, but I've never done Southern Caribbean. I have not been to the ABC Islands. We may have one of those booked. But see what I mean? There's always something that you can continue to add bucket list items in the Caribbean. Last but not least is the Mediterranean. So for those of you who live in Europe, the Mediterranean is your Caribbean. So for us in the US, we go to the Caribbean all the time. That's our backyard. That's where we go when we're ready to cruise. But think about that different. For those that live in Europe, you probably want to come to the Caribbean. For those of us in the US, we want to go to the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is a great way to see Europe. Europe, obviously, we're talking lots of different countries, but on a Mediterranean cruise, you're in a different port every single day because everything's so close together. You don't have all those sea days to get to an island or get to here. These are all mostly mainland ports that you're going to. So you can do Eastern Mediterranean, Western Mediterranean. You can combine it with a trip up to Southampton and do England, or even go further from that. But the Mediterranean is definitely a bucket list. If you've never been to Europe, great way to see it. Try different things. And if you've already been, try a different itinerary. There's so much out there. So I hope that I have sparked your interest in at least one trip. Tell me something that you have done that is on this bucket list. Tell me something that maybe you've added to your bucket list. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. And again, If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.